The community of Kraaifontein, that's in Cape Town, is reeling from Wednesday evening's triple murders, which 3 sets of people were killed in one of those attacks. They were allegedly attacked by an angry mob in Wallacedene. So on Tuesday, 6 people were shot dead in the area. So for context, here is what happened. So yesterday we were reporting to you that 6 people had been killed in double murder cases in each of those instances. This morning we woke up to the news that in almost the same area, there was an apparent vigilante attack that resulted in the deaths of 3 people. The attack comes on the back of National Police Commissioner Fannie Masemola's visit to Kraaifontein yesterday. It's believed the victims of the mob justice attack or the vigilante assault were beaten up and had their bodies torched by angry community members. Residents say they're calling for police involvement to fight crime in the area and that those calls have so far fallen on deaf ears. The Minister of Police, Professor Firoz, Cachalia, has been meeting with high-level people in the government in the Western Cape, including at municipal level. He was also today expected to meet with the Premier of the Western Cape, that is Alan Winde, and the Judge President to reflect on the security situation. Let's speak further about the situation in the Western Cape, and we're fortunate enough to be joined tonight by Premier Alan Winde, who was supposed to have met with the acting police minister. Premier, good to have your time. So has the meeting taken place, and if so, what good has come from your conversations today?
So good evening. Thank you very much. Yes, we had the meeting this afternoon. First of all, just Professor or Minister, all the titles, Cachalia, and it was really good to see him. I had already served with him when he was the MEC for Community Safety, when I held the same position a few years ago. So it was really easy to get the conversation going, of course, about a very, very serious matter. He has taken over. He's got to get up to speed, and we've got to work out areas where we can work together. We might call for big changes, but what we've also got to do is get what are we going to do today and tomorrow. So we've agreed that the MOU that we've got between national government, provincial government, and local government is an area that we signed a year ago. But we all agree that there's insufficient work being done there, and we are now going to highlight those areas that we are really going to push much harder on. We also said that from a resourcing point of view, we understand that SAPs are totally under-resourced. We are putting a lot more focus from the province and the city into manpower on the ground. How do we get SAPs and our law enforcement to work together? And then how do we aid it through investigations? And we've said, how do we find ways in which the city law enforcement officers and the LEAP officers can get involved in investigations, as so to get better court dockets and get cases in court so we get consequences. And then how do we use better systems to get better data and evidence so we can actually build these better cases, so we can react quicker, that we can be on the ground. I mean, as you've just reported now, what's happening, it's horrendous in Kraaifontein. Right. But then just last week, it was taxi violence. The week before, it was gang violence in Mitchell's Plain. It is just ongoing, and we have to really clamp down, work together, and move the needle on getting crime sorted out.
There's a lot of conversation, and you're optimistic that something good will come from your meeting with the acting police minister today. But for the people in communities affected by this violent crime and gangsterism, it feels very much as though the authorities at every level, national, provincial and local, have lost control of the situation, and that ultimately the gangsters are doing as they please, killing wherever they want to, even on the doorstep of courts. Have you lost control of the security situation in areas like the Cape Flats?
So I want to say no, but I do agree with you. And the minister said quite categorically that we've got to send a strong message to organised crime and to gangsters that they are not able to do what they are doing, running rampant. And really, our communities are suffering tremendously. We've got to make sure that we zoom in and get a better policing system. I think good news was the city this week put another 700 boots on the ground, officials, officers on the ground, going into every single ward. We've got the 1,200 LEAP officers that we've put on from the provincial side to act as a force multiplier with the South African Police Service. We know that there's been a decrease in the number of deployed officers. We've got to see that we get that up. We spoke to the minister about that. We've got to join forces and getting more resources into policing. And then, of course, those other issues that I spoke about the intelligence, about the data, about the evidence. so that we can actually get those convictions. We can't have arrests today and those perpetrators are out on the street tomorrow again.
The problem here, Premier, is that the gangsters and other criminals in your province don't seem afraid of the police, even with the increased deployments. I mean, just last night, we're having a conversation about 6 people killed in almost the same area. We're hearing communities that say even the police service has not been insulated. It too has been infiltrated by criminal elements. And you said this earlier. It's about what happens tonight, what happens tomorrow to guarantee that people trying to get to work, trying to get to school won't be struck by bullets as they are going about their lives innocently.
So we had a safety council this week. We had SABC in the room. We had the city law enforcement in the room. We had the criminal justice system. So the public prosecutions were in the room. The prisons and that system was in the room, saying we've got to all find new ways in which we can actually start to move these numbers down. Because, as you say, I mean, every single day there's another story somewhere else where just citizens are getting shot at and murdered, and that is just absolutely unacceptable. And we've got to do this together. We know SAPS has got a certain responsibility. We know they're under-resourced. We're trying to add extra resources from the city and the province. We've got to get these resources strategically deployed. We need our neighborhood watchers working with us. We need the court system. Tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, I then follow up the meeting that the minister had with the Chief Justice, with our own provincial commissioner of police, just pushing hard that we get action. We've got to make sure that we can show citizens that there is a system that's actually working in their favor and not, as we see now, working against them.
One of the concessions you've made, Premier, and this has also been made even, I think, by Minister Cachalia, the then Minister Cachalia, when he appeared before a parliamentary committee to speak about the anti-gang response at the time, the anti-gang strategy around 2019 when this came up, that ultimately it's one thing to sort out policing, but there are socio-economic factors at play. So do you accept that while people in places like Mitchell's Plain and Mfuleni are still poor and unemployed, so this gangsterism problem will also remain rampant?
Absolutely. It's got to be a two-pronged approach. You can't police your way only out of the system. So, of course, we might be under-resourced when it comes to policing, but and we need to bolster that. But at the same time, it's about violence prevention. It's about the economy and jobs. It's about investment into infrastructure and services. All of those go together. So, for example, a province's responsibility, how do we do more in violence prevention? We've launched programs that look at the first 1,000 days of a child's life. We've got a very extensive program into youth at the moment called Planet Youth. We've interviewed across 129 schools in these highly crime-infected and poorer areas amongst 13 and 14-year-olds. What are the issues? How often have you been involved in alcohol? What is the level of drugs? So that we are intervening in the space where young people are getting drawn into the gangs. We've got to get them across into finishing their school with an opportunity of getting a job, of furthering their education, and of being a positive role player in society. So I absolutely agree with you. It is about both of those prongs.
And the sense, just lastly, from people in these communities, by the way, is that you've all failed them, national, provincial, and at metro level. They feel you failed them. They've been left to fend for themselves against criminals. And now we're seeing today in Kraaifontein what appears to be a vigilante attack. I wonder if we're not going back to the horrific pictures of the 90s where there was Pagad, where it too emerged as a vigilante movement going after gangsters, trying to reclaim communities. But we know what consequences that then had. Are we not at risk of going back there? Also because there's been such a loss of faith in the ability of people like yourselves, the minister, the mayor, to do right by communities under siege.
Okay, so first of all, I sincerely hope we are not going back there. That we cannot afford. We know what the consequences are. I think for communities to understand that today, where we got all 3 spheres of government to say, yes, we will commit absolutely to working together to make sure that we move this needle. we've got to, and you're right, if you get on the ground, you can talk about statistics, you can talk about, whatever you want. But when people are seeing their family members shot, when the next door neighbor's just been murdered, none of that matters. And every single one of the people in the system have failed. We've got to make sure that we build trust, that we empower the system and join up the system to work in a strategic way to bring about safer environments. And that'll only be achieved when you can show the difference and people can feel it, and then that trust will be built up.
That's right, Premier. Thank you so much for your time. Premier of the Western Cape, Alan Winde, speaking to us about the gang violence situation in and around Cape Town. Pardon me. Mpo is here with a look at the weather.